So I think telling that story so that some other teenager can say, oh my goodness, that's me, or that's like me, or that sounds like me, can help save that person a great deal of personal grief further down the road. And so that's what informs my nonfiction at this point, is mostly my bipolar story. My fiction, it comes a lot from stories that I grew up hearing. Not that they're true stories, but that I know people in similar situations, and I just take them and spin them out and make them my own.
Okay.
And the poetry is very much a minor sideline. I've had a few pieces published, but basically, if it's too short for a story, it winds up as a poem.
Okay.
But the bipolar moods make it sometimes very difficult to achieve a process, to have much of a process, because when you're manic, you can write all day, every day, never stop. When you're depressed, it's usually a fight to get words down on the page. So the disease itself has an effect on my process.
Sure. So with that, how do you manage that? Or do you plan ahead around that? But on the days, let's say, where you're feeling more depressive, do you try to push through, or do you just, play it by ear, depending on how you feel, and then go from there?
Well, I write every day. I have a blog, www.julielwhitehead.wordpress.com, and I write on it every day, manic, depressed, or what have you.
Okay.
And that's a good writing practice for me. The blog is about my bipolar disorder, so if nothing else, I write down how I'm feeling that day and how it's affecting me and what I try to do about whatever is affecting me.
Okay.
And so that's something that gets done every day of the week. But as far as the creative writing practice, right now, since I'm in an MFA program, all my writing is assigned writing, aside from the blog. It's a case of writing to the assignment, and I usually don't have a lot of trouble with that. I haven't had a serious episode in several months now. I believe the last time I was hospitalized was spring break of this year. So I haven't had a serious episode since then, but I had to fight through a great deal to make it through that class that I was taking when I had that little bit of a stutter step, I guess you could call it, on my way to stability.
Yeah. When you're in the middle of writing, regardless of kind of what the end result is going to be, how do you know when that piece that you're working on is finished?
When no more words come out. Really that's when I've done the most of the writing that's going to happen to it. Now I go back and refine and revise, but usually that's in response to a call. If I want to send it to a certain publication and they say they want X number of words, I go back and I cut it back to those words if it's something that I think is suitable to the publication. A lot of my writing is long form, but I'm able to break it down into isolated incidents, typically, especially concerning bipolar disorder. I'm able to pull certain incidents out and write to those. And so that's how I've done a great deal of my work, say, for Defying Shadows, the blog that I write for in Canada. That's where I publish a lot of my nonfiction work right now.
Interesting. Why Canada? Is it just because it just works out that way, or is there something particular?
Well, when I started off blogging, I decided to get into guest blogging. And so I have my own blog, but this Canadian blog simply happened to be a blog larger than my own that had more readers. It was more established, and it was a case of reaching a different audience than I might reach otherwise, and a case of reaching a larger audience than I might with my own smaller blog.
Interesting. Does your daily practice of blogging, either for your blog or for this other blog, has that helped or hurt your novel writing process?
I don't think it's hurt it. A lot of times it's a case of taking something from my blog and elaborating on it and turning it into something for the other one or into something for another journal. Now, as far as writing fiction, I wouldn't say it's hurt my fiction process, but my emphasis tends to go other places.
Okay.
I do primarily nonfiction writing right now. I write fiction to the assignment, but and I try and get that published. I'm not actively writing a fiction piece right now. Mm-hmm. I just finished a play that I turned in for my playwriting workshop that I may take and turn into a short story, because I think it would be a successful short story. So my fiction time is kind of up in the air right now.
Sure, I gotcha. As your writing career has progressed, is there one or two things you can point to that has helped you the most with your writing career?
Neil Gaiman came to a certain point in his career where he wasn't finishing projects they started. Mm-hmm. He said once he started finishing projects they started, he started having a great deal more success. So his advice of finishing projects, whatever finishing a project looks like for you, mm-hmm. has been something that stuck with me. Okay. To finish it and do with it what you will, but to not leave it just hung up. If you get hung up on something and you can't take it any further, cut your losses and call it finished. Make the changes to it that'll finish it off if you need to. If you've gone too far and need to cut back, you do that. But he said always finish projects, because finished projects turn into published projects. Mm-hmm.
Great. So with your writing career, I know that you mentioned, especially early on, you put yourself out there a lot to try to find an agent and try to find more publishers. When you look at fear and the fear of publishing your work or putting yourself out there more, how do you approach those times where you feel apprehensive about something, and how do you push past it?
I don't have a lot of fear when it comes to writing, because I have written some very deeply introspective pieces that have been published, mm-hmm. and I've not gotten anything but positive responses from people, even where I've confessed to actually attempting suicide. Mm-hmm. I put that out there, saying this is when I hit the very rock bottom, and I actually made an attempt at killing myself, the only serious attempt I've ever made at it. I've been hospitalized for suicidal thoughts before and after, but the only time that I really did try to kill myself, I wrote about that, yeah. And I didn't get anything but positive responses from it. Yeah. People saying how much they appreciated what I had to say, how it made them understand people that have that kind of difficulty more. Just a wonderful response from people. I've never gotten that anyone's come to me with a negative response, yeah, to anything I put out along those lines. Now, my fiction, I've had a little bit of pushback because I tend to write very dark fiction. And people are like, why do you put that out there? I don't want that in my head. And I say, I don't want it in my head either. That's why I put it on the page. Because I can't let it stay stuck. I have to get it out.
Yeah. So with your own personal story, did you feel nervous writing about a suicide attempt?
Not really. When I write about things on the blog, the idea is that everybody can read it, but nobody is. Yeah. It tracks how many viewers I get, and I know how many people are reading it. Sure. But just the idea that anybody could read it is empowering. Mm-hmm. And where I wrote about that piece, it got a lot of play locally. And I was not apprehensive at all about it because it happened it was a difficult time in my life, but I'm not ashamed of it from the standpoint of I don't want anybody to know about it, because the more people know about these sorts of things, the more we as a society can start addressing what causes this sort of behavior. Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel like my job is to let people know what's going on in my head so that they can say, if that God forbid, one day that sort of behavior lands on them, they'll know to say, I need help. I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to somebody that's gone through this. I need to talk to somebody, a professional who knows how to handle this. They won't just keep it bottled up inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with your career and as it has evolved so far, what would you say has been the best advice you've ever received?
Always write honestly. Always write to the honesty of a situation. Even when you're doing fiction, make sure it's honest fiction, mm-hmm. because the reader can tell when you're faking it. Mm-hmm. When you're faking concern, when you're faking, when you're making up something that isn't honest to your characters, the reader will be able to tell. And that actually came from George Bernard Shaw. I studied him when I was in grad school. Mm-hmm. And he said, I write out of my truth. And he said, that's all I can do. Even if it's not somebody else's truth, they know that it's mine. And so that's what I try to do, is write the truth. Mm-hmm. And that has informed me from journalism all the way up to now. Because as long as, if you're telling the truth about something, nobody can argue with you.
Mm-hmm. So true. Amazing. Thank you. So Julie, this has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for taking the time to openly and honestly chat with me about your career. I really appreciate it. If the listeners would like to read more of your work and see what you're working on next, where is the best place or places they can go to do that?
Probably my blog, www.julielwhitehead.wordpress.com.
Okay, perfect. And I will put those in the show notes, as well as some links to your projects, so they can just click on through and read them.
All right.
Wonderful. Again, thank you so much, Julie. This has been great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Advance Your Art podcast. If you like this episode, please go into iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so that every single time I release a new episode, it will go directly to you without even thinking about it. If you're interested in hearing older episodes, please go to advanceyourart.com, where you can find the catalog of everything I've done so far, as well as contact information and projects I'm working on. Thank you again, and have a great day.